8 exercises that 99% of people do wrong in gyms. Some exercises are true pillars of muscle development. Who would question the effectiveness of a good squat or a well-executed lateral raise? These classic movements have built impressive physiques for decades. However, there is a serious problem. Even though they are extremely efficient, basic errors in execution can throw all that effectiveness in the trash, and worse yet, drastically increase your risk of injury. That's why today you will see the 8 exercises that most people perform incorrectly at the gym and identify these critical errors. Pay attention until the end, because number 4 is one that practically everyone gets wrong, and probably you do too. Exercise number 8, lateral raise. The lateral raise is one of the most popular exercises to develop the lateral deltoid, that part of the shoulder that gives width and the desired V shape to the torso. When well executed, this movement perfectly isolates the middle deltoid, creating that cap on the shoulder that every bodybuilding practitioner aims for. However, errors in the lateral raise are extremely common. The first and most serious is throwing the trunk forward or to the sides during the movement. When you lean your trunk, you are unconsciously trying to make the exercise easier, using momentum to help lift the weight. The problem? You drastically reduce the tension in the lateral deltoid, which is precisely the target muscle, and transfer the effort to other areas. Another critical error is raising the dumbbells above the shoulder line. Many believe that the higher you lift, the better the result will be. False. When you exceed the shoulder line, the tension in the lateral deltoid decreases significantly and begins to overload the shoulder joint, specifically the rotator cuff. This can lead to chronic inflammation and, in more serious cases, to subacromial impingement. Using the trapezius instead of the lateral deltoid is another classic error. The consequence? Your deltoids don't develop, and you still run the risk of developing muscle imbalances that can lead to pain in the neck and upper back. To maximize results, keep the scapulae slightly retracted and depressed throughout the movement, focusing exclusively on the abduction of the arm by the lateral deltoid. Raising the hand before the elbow seems like a small detail, but it makes all the difference. This error completely changes the biomechanics of the exercise, reducing the activation of the lateral deltoid by up to 30%. To execute correctly, imagine that your elbow is the point that leads the movement, with the hand just following along. Exercise 7, triceps pushdown. The triceps pushdown is probably the most popular exercise to develop the back of the arm. This muscle represents about 2/3 of the volume of your arm, and developing it properly not only improves aesthetics, but also enhances pushing exercises like bench press and shoulder press. The main error in the triceps pushdown, which practically destroys all its effectiveness, is moving the elbow during execution. The elbow should function as a fixed hinge, remaining stable and close to the body throughout the movement. When you allow the elbow to move forward and backward, or worse, away from the body, you are distributing the tension to other muscles and significantly reducing the work in the triceps. Another frequent error is using body momentum to push the weight down. Notice how many people you see at the gym swinging their trunk or giving that little row to complete the movement. This not only reduces the stimulus to the triceps, but can also overload the lumbar spine and shoulders. Inadequate grip also compromises results. Many use a grip that is too wide or too narrow, which can lead to uneven recruitment of the different portions of the triceps. The ideal is to maintain a grip at shoulder width or slightly narrower, depending on the type of cable or bar used. Finally, many people fail to correctly complete the movement. To maximize the contraction of the triceps, it is essential to fully extend the forearm at the lowest point of the movement, performing an isometric contraction for 1 to 2 seconds. Exercise 6, row. This exercise works various back muscles simultaneously, including the latissimus dorsi, middle and lower trapezius, rhomboids, and even the biceps as a secondary muscle. The first critical error is excessive inclination of the trunk backward during the movement. When you lean back, you are essentially using momentum to lift the weight, instead of consciously contracting the back muscles. This not only reduces the effectiveness of the exercise, but also puts unnecessary pressure on the lower back. Swinging the trunk during execution is another serious and extremely common error. This pendular movement may seem harmless, but it diverts tension from the target muscles and can lead to spinal injuries. The row should be a controlled movement, where the force comes from the conscious contraction of the back muscles, not from momentum. The most common error is using more force in the arm than in the back. Many people end up transforming the row into a biceps exercise, pulling with the arms instead of contracting the back. To avoid this, think of your arms as mere hooks that connect the weight to your dorsal muscles. The key is to pull with the elbows, not with the hands, imagining that you are trying to bend the bar with your elbows. The position of the elbows during the movement is also crucial. Elbows very close to the body emphasize the latissimus dorsi more, while more open elbows work the trapezius and rhomboids more. The error is in not adjusting the position of the elbows according to the muscle group you want to prioritize, or worse, letting the elbows travel without control during the movement. Exercise 5. Classic squat. This compound movement, often called the king of lower body exercises, works practically the entire body, with emphasis on the quadriceps, glutes, hamstrings, and core. Besides being extremely efficient for muscle mass gain, the squat improves the functionality of the body as a whole, strengthening structures that we use daily. Despite its popularity, the squat is also one of the exercises most incorrectly executed in gyms. The first critical error is curving the lower back during the movement, technically known as spinal flexion. When you allow your lower back to round during the squat, you are putting enormous pressure on the intervertebral discs, which can lead to hernias and other serious injuries. Another common error is allowing the knees to go too far beyond the toes without control. Although it is natural for the knees to advance slightly beyond the toes in some cases, when this occurs excessively and without control, it creates unnecessary pressure on the knee joint, specifically on the patellar tendon and meniscal structures. This error is particularly dangerous for those who already have a history of knee problems. Not going down enough during the squat, the famous shallow squat, is another error that drastically limits the benefits of the exercise. Studies show that full squats, where the hips descend below the knee line, promote greater activation of the glutes and hamstrings, in addition to being safer for the knees when executed correctly. Shallow squats not only reduce muscle gains, but can also create strength imbalances between quadriceps and hamstrings. A frequently neglected technical error is supporting the weight on the toes instead of the heels. The weight should be distributed between the middle of the foot and the heel, allowing you to push the ground with the entire base of the foot. Before we continue to number 4, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Having constant access to correct and science-based information is what will make you progress with health in the long term in the world of bodybuilding. Exercise 4, front lat pull down. The most common error here is not lowering the scapula before starting the pulling movement. When you simply pull the bar without first depressing the scapulae, you direct the work mainly to the trapezius and significantly reduce the activation of the latissimus dorsi. This doesn't mean you will hurt yourself doing this, but it is an error that can cost you years of executing the movement without achieving the expected result. Another frequent error is pulling predominantly with the arms, transforming what should be a back exercise into biceps work. When you focus on arm strength, the back muscles, which are much larger and stronger, are not adequately recruited. Focus on pulling with the elbows toward the hip, consciously contracting the latissimus dorsi. Letting the elbow go backward when pulling is another subtle technical error, but one that completely alters the biomechanics of the exercise. When the elbows move backward instead of descending in a straight line, you transform the movement into a kind of row, reducing the activation of the latissimus and increasing the work of the rhomboids and middle trapezius. Keep the elbows pointing to the floor throughout the movement to maximize the work in the latissimus. The position of the spine also deserves attention. Many people execute the front pull down with excessive hyperextension of the spine, arching the back extremely. This not only reduces the effectiveness of the exercise, but can also lead to compression and pain in the lumbar region. Maintain an erect posture, or with a slight inclination backward, but without exaggerating. And don't forget the importance of control and stretching of the eccentric phase. Do a good range of motion on the way up. Exercise 3, bicep curl. The most common error in the bicep curl is using momentum with the trunk, the famous cheating in the gym. It gets difficult, and the person sways the body to help lift the weight. By doing this, you are essentially transferring the effort from the biceps to other muscles of the body, mainly the lower back. Besides drastically reducing the tension in the biceps, this pendular movement puts unnecessary pressure on the lumbar spine, potentially leading to serious injuries over time. Moving the shoulders or elbows during execution is another technical error that compromises the effectiveness of the exercise. The elbow should function as a fixed hinge, remaining stabilized at the side of the body throughout the movement. When you allow the elbow to move forward and backward, or the shoulders to rise, you are redistributing the tension that should be concentrated in the biceps. The result? Less muscle growth and higher risk of shoulder inflammation. Exaggerating the weight and compromising the technique is also extremely common. In this exercise, many practitioners, driven by ego, choose weights that are clearly beyond their technical capacity. This not only reduces the muscular activation of the biceps, but also exponentially increases the risk of injuries, especially tendinitis in the elbow and ruptures of the distal biceps tendon in extreme cases. A less obvious but equally harmful technical error is the incorrect position of the wrists during the exercise. Many allow the wrists to bend during the movement, which transfers part of the tension to the forearms and reduces the activation of the biceps. Keep the wrists in a neutral position or slightly extended to maximize the work in the biceps. Exercise 2. Standing calf raise. The standing calf raise exercise is fundamental to develop the calf muscles, mainly the gastrocnemius, which is the superficial muscle that gives that diamond appearance to the back of the leg. Beyond aesthetics, strong calves are essential for activities such as running, jumping, and even for the health of the knees and ankles. Despite seeming simple, the standing calf raise is frequently executed inefficiently, which explains why so many people go around claiming that it's impossible to develop calves naturally. The most common error, and one that practically guarantees that you will have mediocre results, is doing the movement too quickly, without cadence, and without control of the eccentric phase. When you perform quick and bouncy repetitions, you are essentially using the spring effect of tendons and ligaments instead of forcing the muscle fibers to work. The eccentric phase should be controlled to maximize the muscle stimulus. Another critical error is performing the movement incompletely. Many don't rise completely on the tips of the toes, or don't descend enough to get a good stretch in the lower position. Studies show that full range of motion is essential for ideal muscle development, especially for the calves, which are notoriously resistant to growth. A common error related to load is believing that the calves need extremely heavy weights to grow. While it's true that the calves support the body's weight all day, and therefore have high resistance to fatigue, the error is in sacrificing technique and range of motion in favor of excessive loads. Studies show that prolonged mechanical tension with perfect technique is more effective for calf hypertrophy than extreme loads with compromised execution. Finally, many practitioners prematurely give up on calf training because, as I said, they fixate in their minds the myth that it is impossible to develop the calf naturally. The truth is that calves respond to training like any other muscle group, but due to their composition of predominantly slow-twitch fibers, they may require greater training volume, higher weekly frequency, and special attention to technique to show visible results. Exercise 1. Planks. The plank is celebrated as one of the most efficient exercises to strengthen the core, involving not only the abdominal muscles, but also obliques, transverse abdominis, spinal erectors, and even glutes and quadriceps to a lesser degree. The most evident error is the incorrect position of the hip, either too high or too low. When the hip is elevated, you drastically reduce core activation and transfer the work mainly to the shoulders. On the other hand, when the hip is too low, you compress the lumbar vertebrae, potentially causing or aggravating back pain. Relaxing the lower back during execution is another serious and extremely common error. When you allow the lumbar region to yield to gravity, creating excessive curvature, you are essentially nullifying the main benefit of the exercise, strengthening the deep stabilizing muscles of the spine. Additionally, this position significantly increases the pressure on the intervertebral discs, potentially leading to injuries, especially in people with a history of lumbar problems. Many also let the head drop toward the floor or, at the opposite extreme, raise the chin excessively, looking forward. Both positions create unnecessary tension in the neck and can lead to discomfort and even headaches. The ideal is to keep the neck neutral, as a natural continuation of the spine, with the gaze directed to the floor slightly ahead of the hands, letting the shoulders approach the ears, or alternatively allowing the shoulders to collapse inward, also compromises stability and can lead to discomfort and even injuries in the shoulder complex. The shoulders should be stable, neither elevated nor completely relaxed, with the scapulae in a neutral position. Finally, inadequate breathing during the plank significantly reduces its effectiveness. Many hold their breath or breathe very superficially, which not only limits endurance but also reduces the activation of the transverse abdominis, a deep muscle essential for lumbar stability. Breathing should be controlled and diaphragmatic, without allowing the abdomen to collapse during inhalations. If you liked this and also want to discover 11 errors that people make outside the gym, don't even realize, and unfortunately also end up throwing all the effort in the trash, we have a video appearing right now on the screen showing and explaining each one of them better. Don't miss it. Thank you for watching until here, and may God bless you, my friend.